Those of you who have been following our reading of the book, Dreams from Our Founding Fathers, First Principles in the Age of Obama by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, thank you for your patience. Of course, having the strike on the main channel, as I referred to in today's main video, prohibited me from continuing the reading. We had left off at the beginning of page 36, so without any further delay. Though Obama Sr. wanted to erase the vestiges of colonialism from Kenya, his policy prescriptions were by no means limited to that anti-colonial end. Obama Sr. saw a limitless role for the national government, so much so that he advocated an income tax rate of 100%. Theoretically, he wrote, "There is nothing that can stop the government from taxing 100% of income so long as the people get benefits from the government commensurate with their income which is taxed." He regarded the notion that such confiscatory tax rates could be counterproductive as quote-unquote a fallacy, dismissing concerns about squashing economic incentives for work, savings, and investment, and not even considering the enormous incursion on individual liberty that the deprivation of all income would represent. As we will see, this type of analysis is something that Alexander Hamilton, who was ironically articulating an economic philosophy for a post-colonial order in America, directly repudiated when discussing the Constitution's taxing power in the Federalist Papers. For now, suffice it to say that this heavy-handed brand of government intervention is inimical to the basic tenets of American political theory, which require limitations on government power and respect for private property rights. Obama Sr.'s fervent support for unbridled government power was equaled by a resolute belief in the competence of central planning and bureaucracies, although finding numerous faults and negative consequences with private enterprise. Obama the Elder glossed over and in some cases and instances outright ignored any ill effects or unintended consequences of government activism, and certainly did not acknowledge that there are certain things that are beyond the capacity of government to do. This is perhaps best illustrated by Obama Sr.'s discussion of encouraging foreign tourism, in which he chided the Kenyan government for not paying any attention to making tourism cheap, so as to include those who are not rich. At the present time, the cost of living is too high for tourists. He complained that hotels charge exorbitant rates and lamented that there were no price controls so that those who were not rich could afford to come to Kenya as tourists, which Obama intimated would allow for more tourism and presumably more economic benefits for Kenya itself. The government, he demanded, ought to do something about this. Putting aside the implicit rejection of the role played by market forces in determining the price of tourism, it is striking that Obama Sr. saw government's role not in helping to create conditions that attract tourists, but in setting the prevailing rates by fiat. That he did not recognize such controls would be doomed to failure speaks volumes about his boundless faith in the capacity of centralized public power. It is this faith in the ability of government to decree a society into prosperity that epitomizes the essence of Obama Sr.'s philosophy. And this represents a rejection of much of what the founders believed to be indispensable principles of good government and a just society. Nevertheless, this belief in transformational change through centralized public power, rather than any type of religious faith, Muslim or otherwise, is what Obama inherited from his father. Before arriving in Chicago as a community organizer, Obama gravitated towards radical politics more in line with his father's socialism than with principles underlying the Constitution. In Obama's book, Dreams from My Father, he recounts that when he was a student at Occidental College in California, he deliberately sought out Marxist professors and structural feminists and punk rock performance poets, and spent his nights in the dorm discussing neocolonialism, France, Fanon, Eurocentrism, and patriarchy. These are not the topics of discussion that one consumed with the Founding Fathers and their principles would typically relish. Indeed, America and her founders are usually seen as villains of monumental proportions by those who embrace such left-wing outlooks. But because there were thousands of so-called campus radicals, most of them white and tenured and happily tolerated, Obama wanted to be more than just another radical face in the crowd, and thus sought additional ways to distinguish himself from bourgeois society's stifling constraints. Dr. John C. Drew a grant-writing consultant and former Marxist who knew Obama when Obama attended Occidental, recalls Obama arguing a straightforward Marxist-Leninist class struggle point of view, which anticipated that there would be a revolution of the working class led by revolutionaries who would overthrow the capitalist system and institute a new socialist government that would redistribute the wealth. Dr. Drew further recalled that Obama thought that wealthy people were exploiting others, that this was the secret of their wealth, that they weren't paying others enough for their work, and they were using and taking advantage of other people. He was convinced that a revolution would take place and it would be a good thing. This notion of the inherently exploitative nature of a free enterprise economy is very much in tune with his father's disdain for private property, and would be an implicit assumption underlying some of candidate and President Obama's controversial policies and statements. As a collegian, first at Occidental College in Los Angeles and then at Columbia University in New York City, Obama shared the political orientation of the campus left, and even embraced the left's fetish cause celebs. He wrote an article for Columbia's Sundial campus magazine titled Breaking the War Mentality, which lauded two leftist student groups for their dedication to the nuclear freeze movement, and Obama wrote for their quest to foster awareness and practical action necessary to counter the growing threat of war, writing during a time when President Ronald Reagan was rebuilding the nation's military power, confronting the Soviet Union, and propelling America to an eventual victory in the Cold War. Obama noted the groups share an aversion to current government policy, are visualizing the possibilities of destruction and grasping the tendencies of distorted national priorities, and are throwing their weight into shifting America off the dead-end track. Employing the tried and true language of campus leftists, Obama described this type of campus organizing activity as laying the foundation for future mobilization against the relentless, often silent spread of militarism in the country. Obama and his fellow campus activists had a fundamental philosophical disagreement with President Reagan. While Reagan, and as we will see, the creators of the Constitution, believed that military strength served to deter foreign conflict, the campus radicals thought that reducing American strength would cause other nations to forego conflict, thus purportedly leading to a more peaceful world. Although Obama portrayed himself as supportive of the goals of the freeze movement, he also questioned whether the goals of the movement were too tame and unlikely to bring about the type of wholesale changes in national policy that he fervently advocated. The narrow focus of the freeze movement, as well as academic discussions of first versus second strike capabilities, Obama wrote, suit the military-industrial interests as they continue adding to their billion-dollar erector sets. Obama wondered whether disarmament, or arms control issues, severed from economic and political issues, might be another instance of focusing on the symptoms of a problem instead of the disease itself. One of the student activists disagreed. We do focus primarily on catastrophic weapons. Freeze proponent Mark Bigelow told Obama, look, we say, here's the worst part, let's work on that. You're not going to get rid of the military in the near future. Obama saw at least some value in an approach that targeted major weapons platforms. As Bigelow pointed out to him, the freeze is one part of a whole disarmament movement, the lowest common denominator, so to speak. The massive reductions in the American military sought by campus activists would be a boon for those looking to drastically increase social welfare spending. For Bigelow, this may dispel the idea that disarmament is a wide issue, because how the government spends its revenue affects everyone. It was, in fact, this prospect for greater domestic non-military spending that appealed to Obama, for he saw the need to reorient America's national priorities away from national defense, which had traditionally been the core function of the federal government, towards greater federal involvement in domestic economic issues, including, and as we will see especially, as a force for the redistribution of wealth. In language alien to anyone not well versed in the discourse of the campus left, Obama concluded his article by postulating that the most pervasive malady of the American experience has been that elaborate patterns of knowledge and theory have been disembodied from individual choices and government policy. Accordingly, he hoped that leftist student groups would serve as a corrective to the twisted logic of which we are today a part. While at Columbia, Obama attended socialist conferences at New York's Cooper Union, ironically the site of Lincoln's 1860 speech in which he embraced American constitutional conservatism and further developed an antipathy toward private business. He described his short stint working at a small consulting firm in Manhattan as being a spy behind enemy lines, as if working in private industry was inherently immoral. Occasionally, Obama experienced glimmers of life spent as a quote-unquote captain of industry, barking out orders, closing the deal before I remembered who it was I told myself I wanted to be, and felt pangs of guilt for my lack of resolve. It was as if he felt himself reneging on the dreams received from his father. But he resented the lack of racial diversity in the corporate world. The only other black faces in the company, he claimed, were the secretaries and security guard. Interestingly, they didn't seem to share Obama's aversion to private industry, and indeed looked forward to him rising through the ranks of the company to become one day the chief executive. When Obama told an African-American security guard named Ike that he planned on leaving the company to become an organizer, Ike told him flatly that he was wasting his talent and that he quote-unquote can't help folks that ain't gonna make it know how, and they won't appreciate you trying. Folks that want to make it, they're going to find a way to do it on their own. Obama was undeterred. He wanted to work closer to the streets as a community organizer for quote-unquote change. Change was the buzzword of Obama's 2008 presidential campaign, but it was not a new slogan for him. It is something that he has been trumpeting since his time as a community organizer. Change won't come from the top. Obama would tell his college classmates change will come from a mobilized grassroots. Yet the concept of change is an elusive one. One thing that is certain is that the concept of change was one of the bedrock principles of the community organizing movement that Obama so eagerly embraced after graduating from Columbia, and this movement is central to Obama's political worldview. As his wife, Michelle Obama, once said, Barack is not a politician first and foremost. He's a community activist exploring the viability of politics to make change. But what specific type of change does the community organizer seek? In the authoritative source for community organizing, Rules for Radicals, self-described radical Saul Alinsky stressed the need for an organizer to have an ideology of change that is flexible enough to accommodate a number of different circumstances and to mask the true radical intentions of the organizer. As reporter Ryan Litson noted in a sympathetic profile of Obama in the liberal New Republic, though Obama spends more than 150 pages in Dreams from My Father discussing his community organizing days, there's little discussion of the theory that undergirded his work and informed that of his teachers. Alinsky is the missing layer of his account. Under Alinsky's theory, maintaining a certain amount of flexibility enables devotees, such as Obama, to organize for power, get it, and use it to, among other things, effectuate a redistribution of wealth. Alinsky asserted that, quote-unquote, the failure to use power for a more equitable distribution of the means of life for all people signals the end of revolution. As Alinsky dispenses mostly tactical advice, there is very little beyond this clarion call for income and property redistribution in Rules for Radicals that would flesh out the stubborn details of Alinsky's revolutionary program. Like a true agent for change in the Alinsky's tradition, and unlike, say, an open militant Marxist, Obama remained, at least insofar as one can tell from reading Dreams from My Father, flexible about the details of his political agenda beyond the basic imperative of redistributive change. While Obama's adherence to the Alinsky's ideology of change tended to obscure any detailed political position beyond his more general redistributive goals, it nevertheless revealed much about his broader philosophical outlook. Unlike the founders, Alinsky rejected the idea of timeless truths. He argued that the organizer does not have a fixed truth. Truth to him is relative and changing. Everything to him is relative and changing. He is a political relativist. In his chilling dedication to Rules for Radicals, Alinsky even rejected perhaps the most time-honored distinction, that between good and evil. And this is a quote from Rules for Radicals. Lest we forget at least an over-the-shoulder acknowledgement to the very first radical from all our legends, mythology, and history, and who is to know where mythology leaves off and history begins, or which is which. The first radical known to man, who rebelled against the establishment and did so effectively that he at least won his own kingdom, Lucifer. Alinsky believed that people were motivated by pure self-interest, and that value and ideals mattered little. His goals were blatantly materialistic. Rules for Radicals, he wrote, is a revolutionary handbook for the have-nots of the world regardless of the color of their skin or their politics. And he made no bones about the fact that his organizing had only one reason for being, that is, organization for power in order to put into practice or promote his materialistic ends. The curious thing about Alinsky is that while he stressed the need for an organizer to eschew fixed truths and take the world as he finds it, his worldview rested on an assumption of a static, class-based society. Mankind, he declares, has been and is divided into three parts: the haves, the have-nots, and the have-a-littles. The haves are on top, with power, money, food, security, and luxury. They suffocate in their surpluses, while the have-nots starve. Although they are fewest in number, though want to keep things as they are and are opposed to change, the have-nots, on the other hand, are chained together by the common misery of poverty. Rotten housing, disease, ignorance, political impotence, and despair. In between those two poles lies the middle class, the so-called have a little, want more, whom Alinsky described as social, economic, and political schizoi, since they are torn between upholding the status quo to protect the little they have, yet wanting change so they can get more. According to Alinsky, the key to bringing about a true political and social revolution was to dissipate man's illusion that his own welfare can be separate from that of all others. As long as man is shackled to this myth, so long will the human spirit languish. This, incidentally, is a theme that Obama would embrace as president on issues ranging from healthcare to job creation. Alinsky asserted a philosophy of the interconnectedness of man. A world where no man can have a loaf of bread while his neighbor has none. If he does not share his bread, he does not sleep, for his neighbor will kill him. Thus Alinsky proposed to harness the self-interest of those who have as a way to enlist their support for his redistributive agenda, for he is beginning to learn he will either share part of his material wealth or lose all of it. The underlying assumption of Alinsky's worldview is that there exists a fixed amount of wealth in society. The rich accumulate wealth at the expense of others, and the only way to make society more equitable is to take this wealth and redistribute it to the have-nots, who are, to Alinsky, the rightful owners of the wealth in the first place. Under this view, the plight of so-called lower class is attributable to the greed of societies, haves, who control an inordinate percentage of the nation's economic pie and selfishly hoard their wealth, leaving little, if any, economic opportunity for those at the bottom. More than 3 decades after the initial publication of Rules for Radicals, then-Senator Barack Obama, in his second autobiography, assigned blame to the haves for a number of societal problems, in terms eerily similar to Alinsky. In The Audacity of Hope, Obama wrote that the problems of poverty and racism, the uninsured and unemployed, are also rooted in societal indifference and individual callousness, the desire among those at the top of the social ladder to maintain their wealth and status whatever the cost, as well as the despair and self-destructiveness among those at the bottom of the social ladder. Alinsky was an atheist, yet it was through the plying of the Alinsky craft as a community organizer that Obama shed his skepticism and embraced religion. As an organizer in Chicago, Obama's goal centered on the mobilization of African Americans for redistributive change delivered through politics, and he soon realized that Chicago churches represented perhaps the most fertile ground from which a political mobilization could be launched. But Obama was warned that his irreligion would be an impediment to forging political relationships with these churches. One area pastor bluntly told him that it might help your mission if you had a church home. It doesn't matter where, really. The pastors will want to know where you're getting yours from, faith, that is. The pastor understood and supported what Obama was trying to accomplish and recommended that Obama talk with a dynamic young pastor named Reverend Jeremiah Wright, who had a strong following among politically minded young people like Obama. Obama's relationship with Reverend Wright became an explosive issue during the 2008 presidential primaries when video clips emerged of Wright's radical sermons. Many of these clips showed Wright making patently outrageous comments. He accused the U.S. government of creating the HIV virus as a means to commit genocide against black people. He proclaimed that rather than saying God bless America, it was more appropriate to exclaim God damn America because it's in the Bible for killing innocent people. He referred to America as being a nation based on the Ku Klux Klan, calling it the U.S. of KKKA. He said that the 9/11 attacks represented America's chickens coming home to roost, fitting medicine for a nation that bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki during World War II. He characterized America as arrogant, racist, military superpower. He compared the United States to the Al-Qaeda terrorist organization, and he asserted that racism was how this country was founded and how the country is still run. Although Obama denied being present for these comments, Wright's sermons raised a concern about Obama's own outlook. After all, Obama and Wright had a close 20-plus year relationship. Wright presided over his wedding ceremony, baptized his 2 daughters, dedicated his house, and was the man who led him from skeptic to self-described Christian. All right, that takes us from page 36 all the way up to page 44, and we will pick this up next time. There is a playlist I'll give you a link to, where if you want to listen to all of these from page 1 all the way up through today, you can listen to them uninterrupted. So thank you so much. God bless. Like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.